In this particular video, we're going to look at the process of creating items, both from the mundane all the way through to the magical. And through that process, we'll see how easy it is to go through and create items that are unique to your campaign and giving it that unique flair or flavor that you can make use of. To ensure the item is assigned to our module, or items in this case, we need to make sure that we open up the items options. Once open, you expand out the group category here and click on the edit groups list. And what we want to do is click on add category. It'll take a second, and then you can just add the name of your module into the actual category. And once done, hit stop editing groups, and you'll now see that you have a new category. As is always the case within Fantasy Grounds, there are many ways to do the same thing. So we could actually easily create an item simply by right-clicking on it and popping open a blank template and giving you the opportunity to literally go through and edit every field that this particular item has. Another way to do that is to take an existing item. So let's say, for example, longsword, and simply copy it. And you do that by left clicking and holding down and then just dragging it. And what you'll get is an unassigned copy for that particular item. To ensure that you move it to the right category, you can select the groups expansion list here again, select uncategorized, and that will identify all of the items that you have assigned or created that are not assigned to anything, I should say. Drop this list down and then drag it over and into the group that you want to assign it to. And now that we see, we have a new item here. Now, where did this thing go? Well, that thing isn't anywhere because I'm still filtering on the word longsword. So if I get rid of that, we should now see that we have two items here. But the good thing about Fantasy Grounds is you still even have more ways to actually go through and do this. These four buttons up here can come into play when you're actually trying to create different types of armor or weapons or different items. These two primarily are a listing. So if you open them, what you will get is a categorized listing of all of the items that have been matched to a given category. So light armor, for example, you've got a mixture of magical and non-magical items, but in the case of studded leather here, you have a magical item. The same thing happens in relation to weapons. And again, it takes a moment because it's literally looking through all of your loaded modules and trying to make sure that it can assign an item to a given category. So you've got your simple melee and ranged weapons here, your martial weapons and your martial, that should be martial melee, but anyway, martial ranged weapons, and then a bunch of other things that you have listed here. And it breaks it down to, in this case, magical items here, whereas if you go to the martial weapons, you get a bit of normal and magical items listed. Now to make use of an item that comes from the weapon or armor category here, all you literally have to do is select that item and drag it into a particular category that you want to group it under. And this gives you a great way to either search. So for example, hand axe. In this case, we have all of the variations of the hand axe or anything that's classified as a hand axe, and we can just simply pick it up and drag it over. Or you can actually manually open it up, close this window, and drag it into place. So there are different ways that you can actually do this. And then what you do is you take this particular item and you modify it. And you modify it to make it unique to your particular campaign. Or if this is a particular loot item that you do plan on giving, as it is now, it's recommended that you add that particular item to your modules to allow it to export as part of your module. That way, you don't need to have the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Player's Handbook loaded in order for that particular item to function in your module. Additionally, you can actually go through and craft your own magical items, combining the effects of two disparate items into one. And you can do that by making use of the templates and the forge option here. What the forge does is it takes any actual equipment that you want to make use of, and you drag it and drop it into this particular side of the window here. Then you take one of these templates and combine that particular item with the template. So you literally would say, let's use the sunblade here. Drag that into there, and that is your template. Now, if I open up the weapons again, and I look for Sunblade, or Longsword rather. And I know that what I'm doing here is a bit redundant because technically a Sunblade is a longsword. I'm just doing this to show you the properties of how this works. What you do is you drag your item over and drop it into this particular item. So in this case, a longsword, and then our template is on this side. And then you click on Forge Magic Item. And that will create a detailed description that blends the information from your longsword with the information from your Sunblade, and it gives you an item that you can make use of. Now, the longsword doesn't really have much in the way of a description. It has a set of properties, such as 1d slashing. It is versatile, so you can do up to 1d 10 points of damage. It is a martial weapon. It's worth 15 gold. It has a weight of 3, and it is a weapon. Those properties were combined into this particular weapon here. So we have the weapon here. It's a martial weapon. The value probably came mostly from the Sunblade here. It has the same weight, it has the 1d slashing, and it's a versatile weapon. If we open up the template for the Sunblade, you'll see that there's a couple of common factors here. It's a weapon and it's a longsword. That's the subtype. Well, the subtype that we got was the martial weapons one, because a longsword actually more or less is a martial weapon. But we inherited the rarity factor that or element in relation to this, and it looks like we might have gained a combination of the 15 gold plus 501 and a random value associated with that. But the description that we see for this particular weapon is from the Sunblade, and that is primarily because this is what gives us the bulk of our properties. Had there been a description for this particular longsword, we would have seen that added to this particular description as well. But you want to be very careful. Now, what we have is we have a description of longsword, Sunblade, +2. So it inherited the +2 attack bonus, attack and damage bonus, from the Sunblade. It added a Sunblade subtitle here, if you will, and then took the characteristics of this particular longsword as the base part of the name. Now, another thing that we've done is that weapon, because we've crafted it while we had our template open, automatically dropped into our item list here. So we don't need to worry about what category it fell under when it comes to the groups. And that is one of the best ways to ensure that any item you create automatically gets dropped into your module, simply by making sure that you have the group that you want to drop them into selected when you actually go through and do this. Now, I'm going to show you some of the risks. All right, so I got a Sunblade, I got a longsword. Let's take a look at this one. This one has a bit of a description. It's a +3 bonus item here. All right, so let me remove, I'm just going to get rid of that, the longsword from the equipment list here, and I'm going to drop this longsword defender into place. Now I'm going to create a new magical item again. Whoa, it is now a +5 weapon. It's combining the defender functionality with the Sunblade functionality, giving it an actual bonus of +5. It's also acquiring the magic property, and which is kind of funny that this didn't, now that I think about it. It should have, because technically the Sunblade is a magical item. But I digress. And then what you see is a description for both the defender and the Sunblade. And it's blended in here so that you, as the DM or a module crafter, can go through and sort of merge the concepts into one particular description, because you gain a +3 bonus to a +2 bonus. Well, the auto parsing of the system might fail in this respect, but it's going to make use of this bonus here when actually running on the character's action page or anything like that. It's not going to worry about this because it has this property. But if you remove this bonus property, it's going to try to figure out what the bonus is based on the descriptions. So you want to make sure that you have a consistent description. So I would take this +2 bonus and add it to here to give it the +5 bonus, and then I would blend a combination of these two things into one big description. So from the defender perspective, you would have the ability to take the total bonus that you have here and decide how much of that bonus is going to get added to your AC versus how much you're going to use as an attack or damage bonus. Okay, so that would be one part of the description, and then you're going to want to take the description here for the radiant damage, because that's the type of damage that you're doing. Now, because you're blending these two together, you might want to update this as 1d6 slashing, but at the same time, maybe make it radiant as opposed to just slashing. Additionally, the Sunblade has this capability where it can cast light, and you might want to have that incorporated into your description. And finally, it also gains the finesse property, so you want to make sure that you adjust things to match a blended combination of that description. But at the same time, a +5 weapon in modern D&D really is very overpowered, especially if you're looking at finishing off at max a level 5, 4 or 5 character level. A +5 weapon is not going to be given to one of those characters unless they're extremely lucky. So you've got to consider a balance, if you will, when it comes to actually signing items and creating new magical items. Another risk is there are certain weapons that really shouldn't be used all that much, and that is the case of the Moonblade, because the Moonblade has a history associated with those particular weapons. Now, I'm not saying you can't use them. What I'm saying is you have to be very careful about using them, because one of the key aspects of the Moonblades is there are already a specifically known number of Moonblades rather that are in Faerun or in Forgotten Realms. They might not exist in other worlds, so you can probably get away with creating them in other worlds. But a Moonblade, one of the benefits that they gain is that for every person or creature who wields it, that Moonblade can potentially inherit the properties of that particular individual, or that make that particular individual who they are. So, for example, someone who tends to defend against evil, maybe the Moonblade will gain the property of protection against evil, or attacking a particular creature that is evil might gain a +3 or a +4 bonus to that particular attack. So the Moonblade will develop those skills or those abilities because it is somewhat of a sentient weapon because it absorbs the soul of its previous wielders, and it's that soul that gives it those properties. Now, the reason why I mention the risks with a Moonblade is that it can very quickly become severely overpowered. So if you use it in combination with another weapon, so let's take that for example, and let's go with a Giant Slayer for example, and you create a combined magical item with this. In this case, we didn't do too badly. We only got a +2 bonus because the Giant Slayer only had a +1 bonus. But a Moonblade's properties aren't really that that useful out of the template. There is actually a different way to go about doing them. The total number of properties a Moonblade will have is completely dependent on how many people have wielded it. And some of the more powerful Moonblades really only have up to 5 distinct properties, or at least that's what I'm aware of. There might be a couple of DMs out there who've crafted a few more that are much more powerful than that, but I do believe even the rulers of the Elvish kingdoms only have swords that actually have up to 5 properties on them. So you got to be very careful about creating them. Now, to make use of those properties, you actually need to go to the table section. And you want to search for Moon, and it will bring up Moonblade properties. And it will give you the option to roll on those particular characteristics. And you do that just simply by clicking on roll. And what it will do is it will it will roll a D100 and tell you what the actual property is. So in this case, increase the bonus to attack and damage rolls by 1 to a maximum of +3. Reroll if the Moonblade already has a +3 bonus. So in this case, it is a +2 weapon. So our bonus goes, this is a locked item here. So our bonus becomes a +3. Okay, so that's our first property. What's our second property? Interesting. We got a subroll here. What minor property does it have? The Moonblade gives a randomly determined minor property, okay, special feature in this case, and it is unbreakable, meaning you cannot break this particular weapon. I actually don't know where that goes when it comes to placement in the particular properties here. So I'm going to add the unbreakable description here. And I wonder if that is... Yeah, let's put it here. Unbreakable. Breakable. All right. So that'll tell the DM that it actually can't be broken, no matter what happens to it. So even if you roll a critical roll, or critical fail rather, and that item is snapped, well, it's void because it's not a breakable item. All right, and then let's go for a third property. Ooh, we got another sub-roll here. Waterborne. This item floats on water and other liquids. Its bearer has the advantage on strength athletics checks to swim. Okay, so that's actually not too bad. In this case, we didn't craft a Moonblade that is overly powerful. We had a +3 bonus, so we got to modify this to +3. It's a Giant Slayer, so it has acquired the properties of the Giant Slayer sword. It's a legendary weapon, can only be wielded by an elf or a half-elf who is neutral good in alignment. Approximate value is that, although it probably went up when we added the additional properties, but I generally tend to consider the initial roll or the initial cost that comes up as the value of that particular sword. And then we gained a handful of properties that added to its capability here. Now, personality comes into play because this weapon is sentient. And you'll want to leave the description of the sentience factor in here. I don't know why it's not allowing me to highlight that. I'm trying to highlight it for you to show you. But it has a sentience. For some reason, there we go. It has a sentience to it. And these are the properties associated with that sentience. But it also has a personality as well as some flaws. So if you click on story, click on templates, you can actually see that there are a number of additional ways to create or flesh out content to a given particular item. So artifact properties, for example, if you click and roll on this, it's going to roll on a number of tables that are already defined by the Dungeon Master's Guide. There we go. And let's see, is there an artifact? Okay, so if you look here, you'll see that these tables here all match up to a series of tables here. And that's from the Dungeon Master's Guide, so Chapter 7. Let's get rid of the subtitle there so that you can see the full property. And let's see, beneficial properties for minor and major, detrimental properties for minor, and major detrimental properties. So if I generate an artifact, doing so is useful for like an end goal for a particular campaign, and I might use one for this particular campaign. You can see that it's gone through and it's created information specific to that particular item, or artifact in this case. While attuned to the artifact, you can use an action to cast one third-level spell, chosen by the DM, from it. After you cast the spell, roll a d6. On a roll of 1 to 5, you can't cast it again until the next dawn. Doesn't actually say what happens on a 6, but I assume that you can cast it again. Major benefits. While attuned to this artifact, you can cast an action to cast one 4th level spell, again chosen by the DM. After you cast the spell, roll a d6, blah blah blah. It's the same thing. Artifact's minor detrimental properties. While attuned to this artifact, your appearance changes as the DM decides. Oh, that could be interesting. Artifact's major detrimental properties. The artifact dilutes magic potions within 10 feet of it, rendering them non-magical. Well, that's going to suck. So that's one way you can go through and do that. Another particular way, and you'll see that because I have the actual story here, we should see that the artifact properties have dropped into there. Well, what about a backstory for a particular magic item? Again, there's a table for that. You can go through and roll that and go who created it or was intended to use it. Giant. The item is larger than normal and was crafted by giants for use by their smaller allies. Okay. What is the detail from its history? So on and so forth. So there's a little bit of a backstory that you can actually go through and create for any particular item that you decide to make use of, especially if you're going to give a bit of sentience to it or a very powerful magical component around it. Additionally, you actually have a sentient magic item persona. Now remember, a Moonblade is sentient, so you're probably going to want to actually combine what you get here from with the properties of a particular Moonblade. So let's see, let's generate. All right, so it's gone through and it's created the intelligence, the wisdom, and the charisma. So that means that is a 16 for its intelligence. Its wisdom is dumb as a stump. That's a 5, and its charisma is a 10. Communication. The item communicates by transmitting emotion to the creature carrying or wielding it. So the DM is going to have to roleplay that part. So you as a DM are going to have to make sure that you're comfortable doing so. But it gives you an actual story element that you could potentially tie into your campaign. Senses, hearing and normal vision out to 30 feet. Okay, so it's not really giving much of any benefit, but it has its own senses. Alignment, chaotic good. Well, the one thing about a sentient item is it generally was only going to be wieldable by a similarly aligned individual. Now, chaotic good, you could probably get away with making use of it as a neutral good character or as a chaotic neutral individual, but it's probably going to prefer a chaotic neutral or chaotic good individual, I should say. Special purpose destroyer. The item craves destruction and goads its user to fight arbitrarily. Well, that could make things a little bit interesting, getting the party getting into fights that they really hadn't intended on doing so. So there's definitely some elements here that you can actually go through and make use of and take advantage of. And again, all of those will show up in the storyline. Now, I'm not going to be keeping these. I'm going to probably come up with something if I do decide to go with a sentient item, but I do know that within this campaign, there is probably an artifact involved in the events that are being created by everything that's going on around Skullcrag. So I might make use of some of those tables for that particular purpose. But I digress when it comes to that particular aspect of things. So all I really want to do right now is go through and create a simple item. And so I'm going to delete these. And you'll see that I've actually gone through and I've fleshed out some of the information specific to the story, and we'll come to that later in the campaign here. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to go through and delete all of these because I don't need any of these for now. Now, you'll notice that I'm not going through and creating a loot parcel just yet. The reason for that is because I need to have the various items that I want to go through and actually make use of. So I'm going to cover the loot parcels in the next video. And it's going to be a relatively short video. All right, so I'm back to where I started. But I'm going to take the simple route, and I'm going to go through and create a basic item. Go to here. Now, I am planning on, is there a cart or wagon? There is a cart. What about a wagon? Oops. Okay. There's a wagon. So this particular party actually has a wagon. So that is one of the things that I want to go through and take advantage of. Okay, so I'm going to create a copy of that particular item, and I'm going to drop it into place. All right, so I've now got a wagon developed off of or copied off of the base Player's Handbook Deluxe edition of that. So there's going to be consistency there. And what else do I need to create here? Just let me have a look at my list here. All right, I also need to create the remains. Okay, so I don't think there are any remains. Nope. What a buddy. Nope. All right. Okay, and as you can see, it can sometimes take a little bit. So what I want to do is just take a very mundane item. Okay, that is mundane enough for me. All right, and I'm going to switch to there and drag the item in. Okay, so now I have two basic items that I'm going to go through and modify and adjust. So this is going to be the remains of, and I still have to come up with the individual's name who had passed away, so I'm going to make this an unidentified, right? Remains of name to be made for now. Non-identified name, human remains. Notes. We had to set up this body to be deceased. It was severely torn and damaged. Dismembered remains of a human male. Okay. It is not really a treasure, but for the purposes of our loot table, it will be. I'm actually not sure on that. We'll come back to that. Rarity, unique. It has no value. And I shouldn't say it has no value. What I mean by that is that there's no monetary value associated with it. You need to. It's definitely got value because it is the remains of an individual as part that had died as part of this particular campaign or as part of the storyline. Let's see. The average weight of a human male in D&D is approximately 150 pounds to 180 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. Seeing as this body has been dismembered, let's say 120 pounds of it is left. All right. I don't know why selection seems to be broken at the moment. It might just be some side effect with the update that just happened. All right. So with this particular body, let's see here. Just trying to think. Okay, that should be enough of a description for now. Now, the body is initially going to be unidentified. But give me 1 second. I'm going to go through and come up with a name for this particular individual. All right. So I've come up with the name of Ferdin Sirsk. Oh, actually, FantasyNameGenerators.com came up with that combination of names that I took one element out of one and took another out of the other. So I'm going to have to make sure that I give them credit for that in this particular module. In fact, I will do that now. So not table of contents. I want credits. So following inspiration. Okay. And some names. Okay, so that's my reminder to flesh that out and make sure that they get a little bit of credit for the name generation here. All right, so at this point, I still have to figure out the type and the subtype. So I'll come back as soon as I have that done. I wasn't happy with the different types that are listed in the official 5th edition grouping, so I've just created a type of remains and a subtype of human. So this item is a bit unique in the sense that the party is meant to pick it up and carry it with them until they get to town so that they can potentially bring closure to someone if they're of a like-minded party, but at the same time they could still potentially miss this. So I'm happy with that. And the rarity is unique because obviously every individual is unique. Okay, so that is going to be a locked item. Now the wagon, if you remember, by default, they're going to start off with a normal wagon. And I'm literally just going to leave that as this particular item. So I'm going to create another copy of this particular item. Now, the wagon they're starting off with is going to be drawn by oxen. I'm not going to worry about adding that as a description, but I am adding some magical capabilities or some additional capabilities, if you will, based on how the party deals with the remains of Ferrodin. So that was part of this. Okay, so their wagon has been repaired, wheels replaced, shod with iron bindings. So that will make this an enhanced wagon. It will just be a wagon unidentified. And this will be improved wagon. Repaired and modified. Oops. By, and what was his name again? The Stable Master. Figures. Okay, NPCs. He never actually explains who he is. Skull Cap. I believe that was Broker. Yeah, Stable Master. Okay. Let's just put in the Stable Master. All right. So, what properties does it have? Okay. Type drawn unique. It will be worth, let's say, 5,000 gold. And by default, that's how much it weighs. Okay. And let's see. As well as axle grease, making the oxen. The result is 10% increased. Okay, so let's take a bit of that description. As well. Axles. I'll reword this later. Okay. All right. What did I say? Okay. All right. So that is a general description of the wagon here, and it'll allow the DM to make use of this particular wagon and realize that there are a few beneficial properties that the party can now make use of. That's why it's unique. It's a drawn vehicle, tack harness, and drawn vehicles. Okay, so nothing else really needs to change. And I'm going to lock that and set it as unidentified for now by default. In fact, interesting. There we go. Okay, so that's already set as unidentified. This can be identified because it's just a typical wagon. Now, the carrying capacity of a wagon is generally different from that from a cart. And to determine what that carrying capacity is actually based on the animal that is actually pulling it. To find that out, what you need to do is go to the library, D&D Player's Handbook, load up the reference manual, expand that out so that it can be searched, and look for, I believe horse is where I found that. Go to mounts and vehicles, and you will find this description here. One thing about it is that an animal pulling a carriage, cart, chariot, sled, or wagon can move weight up to 5 times its base carrying capacity. So that's not the carrying capacity of the wagon, it's the base carrying capacity of the animal itself, including the weight of the vehicle. If multiple animals pull the same vehicle, they can add their carrying capacity together. All right, so we know that we're going to have 2 oxen that are coming into play here. Well, there's a problem. D&D doesn't apparently have oxen. So I'm going to have to go through and create a new item. But you can see here in this column that there is a carrying capacity. So I'm going to make a variation on one of these particular animals. And I'm going to do that based on what real world oxen can actually potentially haul. So give me one sec, I'll find that out. So a common theme appears to be that oxen can actually carry more than a horse from a carrying capacity. And the average seems to be about 600 pounds. So what I'm going to do, you can see here that we can't really drag or drop or copy these particular items. You can see here that doing so just really isn't doing anything. And there we go. Seems to be a few. Ooh, that's not good. A few items here. But what I can do is that. So now I can modify this. And once again, what is going on with the... All right, so oxen. Well, there's really no other name than oxen. Mounts, rarity. Common. Now, they themselves are approximately 500 pounds. All right, so that's what I'm going to select for this particular campaign. I'm not going to worry about this anymore. Now, what that means is that for every oxen that is attached to this particular wagon, it can carry 5 times that total weight. So that means hauling capacity of a maximum of... Now let's reword that. For a maximum of 3,000 pounds. And when you add 2 of them, the weight is combined. So you can get up to 6,000 pounds in the wagon, although the wagon might structurally fail. But 3,000 pounds is a good carrying capacity for a good-sized wagon, in the opinion, in my particular opinion for this particular campaign. So I'm going to flag that as done. And the party's going to start out with an oxen and the wagon. They might be in it, they might not. And if they decide to actually complete this particular quest and retrieve the remains, then they will get this wagon, which will allow it to carry 10% more on this because of the advantages that it has gained, the ease of movement of the wagon, stuff like that. So it can carry 3,300 pounds. Will be the advantage. So that's 300 pounds more than what it could carry prior. And if you double that, that would be 6,600 pounds. Okay. I think that's reasonable. I don't think that's too overly powered. Now, having said that, I am going to There we go. I can now edit this window. Chart. All right, so there is a different reward based on what actually happened. Now, it states here that I have to replace the chat bubble, but I already got rid of that chat bubble, so I can get rid of that. So in theory, this particular story element is now 100% complete because there's no outstanding to-do items other than to maybe drag this particular item into there. Let's see here. Control 1. And drag that there, and I'll maybe reword that later. Okay, so it's called it a wagon because it's initially unidentified, which is fine. And it's just going to link to the improved wagon. So I'm going to just simply update that to say that. Okay. There is one adjustment I have made to the oxen. I just realized that there was no indication as to how fast they went, so I've just added they have a speed of 30 feet. Oxen can carry more, but they tend to go slower. So this is actually a pretty good speed. It seems to be about 10 feet per turn, if you will, slower than the horse that we have in the game. So I think that's a reasonable speed for a particular beast of burden of this type. So before I finish the video, I want to do one more item, and that's the actual sword. This particular sword, I have not decided as to whether it is going to be the quest reward or whether it is going to be discovered earlier on. I do know it's going to potentially come into play in module number 2 that I'm planning for this particular series of modules, but I'm not entirely certain whether it will get used in this particular campaign. So I want to load up the forge. I'm going to get rid of these. And for the template, I want the sun blade. I like the concept of that blade. And you can see here it's fairly easy. It's not an overly powerful weapon. It is a +2 attack bonus, which is why I'm leaning more towards giving it as a reward item for completion of the entire quest as one of the items. So I'm going to drag that into here, but I'm going to throw a bit of a switch onto this. I'm thinking maybe, no, I want an item, not another template. There is one gotcha with the forge here. I've selected a sunblade template here. If I were to try to drag an armor item into here and create a forgery or forge this magic item together, it's not going to work. So let's see. If I drag that into there and I try to forge it, you're going to get an error. And that's a good thing because it's a limitation, an intentional limitation of the item forge that you can't mix items together. You can't take armor, rings, amulets, and add the properties from a particular weapon to it, or vice versa. And I think that's a good thing because it means that in order for you to actually create an actual item, you need to do it in a way that makes sense. All right. Now I'm thinking, let's minimize the categories here. It's going to be a martial weapon. But rather than it just being a long sword, tricky, tricky, tricky. I'm thinking it might be a great sword. I'm going to give it a... Let's just do a normal great sword. There. And this is on the off chance that one of the characters in the campaign is a fighter that can use large martial weapons. And combine that together. So I've now got a great sword that is a sunblade. It is not going to have the finesse capability because I don't think it would be fair for a sword of the size to acquire finesse. You can see that the worth or value of it has gone up a bit. It has 6 pounds. It's a +2 weapon. Heavy, two-handed. Yeah, it doesn't make sense for that to be a finesse weapon. So let's modify the description. If you were... Okay, that doesn't make sense in this particular case. Really? Oh, it's locked. Duh. Again. There we go. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Here's the longsword hilt. Okay. Alright, so it does radiant damage. And it's 2d6. I'm going to give this a, due to its larger size, a 20-foot radius. And maximum distance of 40 feet. I think that makes sense. Alright. That's it. That's literally all it takes to create an item that might be unique to your particular campaign. Now, I haven't decided whether I'm going to use this weapon or not. We'll see. What did it? 980. Great sword. Not freight sword. Great sword. Alright. Rare. Yep. Okay, so it's going to require attunement. Excellent. Okay. There. I think that allows, and you'll see it's already here. So we don't have to worry about actually adding it into our particular weapon category. And that is literally the end of this video. So we've gone through, we've now created some of the items that we're going to make use of. And in the next video, I'm going to go through and link them into loot parcels, as well as generate some additional loot parcels for things that we already know we need. Now, I've already taken care of this, so I don't need to worry about that. And this would be one of the parcels that I have to go through and create. I still have to create a parcel for the cart. And I might look at this to see if it makes sense to have a different reward. We'll see. Okay. So that is the end of this particular video. And we'll see you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.